Hello guys, thank you so much for coming back to watch another video on my channel. So Capcom has not confirmed any official confirmation or any news about this upcoming Resident Evil 9 title. However, we're going to be talking about what sort of enemy types we're going to expect from Resident Evil 9. Now if you're new to my channel and you do end up liking this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel because it would allow me to make more of these videos for you guys. Resident Evil universe in gaming especially had a numerous types of enemy types we've seen throughout the games, from Resident Evil 1 all the way to Resident Evil 8 Village, including all the remakes which we had up until today. Now Capcom is trying to do new experiments with these locations and the new enemy types and how they're presenting the gameplay, that it has been shifted from tank control to third-person shooter now to a first-person perspective. And I think that's very innovative and a bold idea from them to continue this legacy and the game franchise which has been going on since 90s without doing a hard reboot on the franchise. Now we know the next game is going to be Resident Evil 9, so we're going to be talking about as to what sort of enemy types we should expect and we should hopefully get from the upcoming Resident Evil 9. BOW Tyrant. Now I know some of you might not agree with this idea, but I think Tyrant was a big feature of the old Resident Evil titles. Now as we've been proceeding further on, we've seen more new BOWs, but we haven't been going back to the original Tyrant idea, which was very prominent in the original trilogy of Resident Evil games. Now Capcom has been going with this new bold direction with the new locations, new characters. Now I think Tyrant is the only sort of enemy type which Capcom hasn't officially gone back to the mainline series. Yes, we've seen them in the remakes, but they're the remakes of the original games, the original Tyrants as Mr. X and Nemesis. And Tyrants were a finest product created by Umbrella, and they can use them as they will, as they did with Nemesis against their enemies. However, I think Capcom, if they continue with a new variant in Resident Evil 9, that would add a new flavor to the game itself, but also would pay a homage to the original Resident Evil titles. Brand new stalker type enemy. Now hear me out. I know some of you is going to disagree, and I think you have been exhausted with the idea of a stalker type enemy. They have overused it with the recent Resident Evil titles, and I do agree with that. However, I think there is a really good potential, and how much Resident Evil 7 was popular due to Jack Baker. I think what they did with Jack Baker, which was a truly terrifying experience for me. I think that was a stalker type enemy done right, where you don't have to spend too much time in it. However, you can also fight back, but that would be wasting your time. And also you have the choice either to fight or flight, which they originally did with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And even in Resident Evil 8 Village, Lady Dimitrescu was the best part of the game, even if you disagree with this opinion. So I think if they add, let's say, a Tyrant enemy or a BAW for a short segment, having the stalker type enemy but having its own AI would perfectly work for Resident Evil 9, rather than doing a generic or repetitive scripted event, which I think would become tiresome for a lot of the Resident Evil gamers out there. And bringing old zombies back, even for a short segment of time, I know some of you already would disagree with that, and some of you would think that Resident Evil 2 Remake has perfected the zombie type enemies, and I agree with you on that. I think in Resident Evil 2 Remake the zombies were perfectly done, and how we should expect it from Capcom to do it properly. As we now going more towards a new direction with the new enemy types, that's more mythological zombie types, I think it will be a great idea to go back to the original zombies, which has started this whole franchise with the Resident Evil 1. And even if you don't have to have a big segment or the main part of the game, you can still have a small segment and continuing the legacy of the old Resident Evil title while keeping it fresh with the new types of enemies you're going to have in Resident Evil 9. And it's not hard for them to do it. They already done it with Resident Evil 2 Remake, and it actually worked really well, as how the mechanics of the zombies was working, even the gore mechanic they've added in Resident Evil 2 Remake. And I think personally, because of the new enemy types, they are more controlled and have more of an AI, whereas zombies, they are mindless freaks which cannot be controlled, and all their purpose is to kill or eat you. So I think for that reason, and for a small segment, I think zombies would perfectly fit in with Resident Evil 9, even if you do it for a very small section of the game. And I think that'll pay a homage to the original Resident Evil titles from Resident Evil 1, as how this game has now evolved from that point onward. I think that will be a great idea to keep the old Resident Evil community very happy. So think about the Thing movie, if you've seen it, as how this alien takes over the body and can perfectly mimics, and it can transform and make it into a collective being. Also, they try to do that same sort of feature with G-Virus, that G-Virus can take over a host body and transform it by creating a brand new entity from it. So I think that's a very grotesque idea to have in Resident Evil 9, and which would add another horror layer to the Resident Evil 9 title. Just imagine you see an NPC who's pretending to be a normal NPC, and it could be a host of this new zombie type, and or a new monster type, which with a new virus they're going to introduce in Resident Evil 9. And Capcom has been trying these new experiments. Just look at the fetus zombie we've seen in Resident Evil 8 Village. That was a clever idea, and it was the most highlighted feature of Resident Evil 8 Village. Zombified animals, and I think they have tried that with Resident Evil 0, which I know it wasn't the best and favorite Resident Evil game out of the franchise. They already done that with Resident Evil 1 to 3, and it actually worked for the franchise. And recently they done that with Resident Evil 4 Remake, where we've seen these parasite wolves, which the parasite can actually come out of these wolves, and it actually was a truly terrifying experience for me. And we don't know what sort of next virus is going to be. Is it going to be a virus or a mold or a bacteria? We don't know what they're going to introduce to the Resident Evil 9. However, I think bringing that sort of horror element with the animal, I think would actually work with the franchise. New enemy type, I think that's what's working in Resident Evil favor right now, as how they continue with the franchise. Then look at Resident Evil 7, we had molded, and those molded creatures, I know there wasn't much variety of it, people loved it, and I think they were quite scary, as how they kind of look like regenerators from Resident Evil 4. The same thing they've done with Resident Evil 8 Village. You had these ghouls sort of types of enemies, you had brand new lichens types of enemies, and I think they were quite terrifying. And you can even add some of the cut content concept arts which you've done in the Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 2 remake, which you can now bring them in Resident Evil 9. And I think it worked for them. I personally enjoyed molded, I even like lichens, and I think that's what highlight these games and it differentiate them as to the previous Resident Evil title. And if you're going to have the same generic type of enemies, then this is not going to continue with the franchise. So I think they already know that whichever the virus type we're going to see, or the parasite we're going to see, or the bacteria we're going to see, whichever that's going to be in the next Resident Evil 9, I think adding a new enemy type, as long as it's scary, I think it will work for Resident Evil 9. What do you guys think? Which enemy type they should add into Resident Evil 9? Please do let me know in the comment section down below in this video. So that's it for the video, guys. I'll catch you again with another video on my channel. Until then, look after yourself. Have a good one.